I wasn't supposed to be in that room. Let me say that again because it matters. I was not the plan. I was the backup, the last-minute substitute. My colleague Patrick was supposed to be on that flight to Montana. He had the folder, he had the relationship, he had the handshake history with the client. But Patrick got appendicitis at 11 o'clock the night before, and my manager called me in a panic, and that's how I ended up on a 6 a.m. flight with a carry-on I packed in 20 minutes and a granola bar I didn't even finish. My name is Vivienne. I'm from Atlanta. I grew up in a house where my grandmother kept the heat low in winter to save money and kept the Bible on the kitchen table like it was a utility bill, something you needed to function. I was the first person in my family to get a college degree, the first to get a master's, the first to walk into the kind of office buildings I used to look up at from the sidewalk and wonder who lived inside them. I worked in commercial real estate development, which sounds fancy, and parts of it were, but most of it was spreadsheets and site visits and being the only Black woman in a room full of men who assumed I was there to take notes. I stopped correcting them out loud. I just started doing the work so well that eventually the confusion on their faces did the correcting for me. That morning in Montana, I drove a rental car 40 minutes from the airport through land so wide and open it made me feel like a punctuation mark in the middle of a very long sentence. I had never seen anything like it. Atlanta is trees and traffic and sound. Montana is sky, just sky in every direction, like God left the ceiling off on purpose. The meeting was at a ranch. Not a cute little ranch, a working operation, thousands of acres, cattle, grain fields, a headquarters building that looked modest from the outside and then hit you with its seriousness the moment you walked in. Warm wood, quiet staff, the smell of real leather and old money that doesn't need to announce itself. I sat up at the conference table, organized my folders, told myself I was ready, and then Callum Whitfield walked in. I Googled him on the plane, of course, so I knew what he looked like in the way you know what a place looks like from a photograph, but photographs don't give you the way a person occupies a room. He was tall, white, early 50s, silver-haired, and he moved like a man who had never once been rushed by another human being. Not arrogant, just settled, like he had made a decision a long time ago about what pace he was going to move through life and had never seen a reason to change it. He shook my hand, said he understood Patrick was unwell and hoped he recovered quickly. Then he sat down, looked at me, really looked, just for a second, and said, "Let's get started." That was it. No small talk, no performance. He just looked at me and then looked at the work, and somehow those two things felt connected. I told myself it meant nothing. I was professional. I was focused. I presented the proposal with the kind of quiet confidence that takes years to build when the world keeps giving you reasons to doubt yourself. The meeting went well. We shook hands again at the end. I drove back to the airport feeling like I had handled something. But I kept thinking about that look. Here's what I learned about Callum Whitfield when I started doing what I told myself was professional research, but what Nolan, my coworker, my work husband, the funniest man I've ever met, called stalking. "Vivienne, it has been 45 minutes. You have been on this man's profile for 45 minutes. I'm being thorough. You are being smitten. I am being thorough, Nolan." He laughed and walked away. I kept reading. Callum came from a family that had been in land and agriculture for 3 generations. His grandfather started it. His father doubled it. Callum came in and, quietly, without making it a story, turned it into one of the largest private agricultural and land development conglomerates in the country. Tens of thousands of acres, processing facilities, a conservation division that protected more natural land than most state governments. He had been on the cover of 2 magazines and given exactly 0 interviews. His public footprint was almost invisible for a man of his size. His wife Catherine had died 8 years ago. Cancer. Fast and brutal by all accounts. They had one son, grown now, who lived in Europe and who Callum apparently had not spoken to in years. Nobody in the industry talked about why. That silence around the subject was loud enough that I noticed it. He gave money away constantly and never announced it. Schools, rural hospitals, indigenous land rights organizations. I found a quote from him in one small-town newspaper, the only quote I found anywhere, where he said, and I'm paraphrasing, that he didn't believe in performing generosity. Either you were doing it for the people or you weren't. I closed my laptop and stared at the wall for a minute. Then I got a message from my manager that Callum's team had requested me specifically for the follow-up meetings, not Patrick, me. Bridget, his chief of staff, a woman with the energy of someone who irons her pillowcases, delivered that message in a tone that made it clear she was reporting information she did not personally endorse. But it didn't matter. I was going back to Montana. The follow-up trips happened over about 2 months. Every few weeks, I fly out, spend a day or two, fly back. The work was real. This was a complicated deal involving multiple parcels of land and a development structure that required careful navigation. But somewhere in between the real work, something else was happening. He remembered things, small things. That I took my coffee with oat milk, not regular milk. I had mentioned it once in passing. That I had said I preferred morning meetings to afternoon ones because my brain worked better before noon. That I had a habit of checking my phone and then turning it face down when I wanted to focus, and that when I did that, it meant I was about to say something important. He noticed that. He told me he noticed that. And when he did, he said it so plainly, without any weight or intention attached, that I didn't know what to do with it. Men notice things when they want something from you. I have lived enough life to know that. But this wasn't that. This was something quieter. This was a man who was just paying attention because paying attention was how he moved through the world. And in my experience, that is rarer than any amount of money. In my 3rd month of trips, a complication in the deal required me to stay at the ranch for 4 full days. There was a title issue on one of the parcels, messy legal history, needed in-person coordination, and my firm decided it made more sense for me to just stay and work through it on site. 4 days in Montana, on a real working ranch, in a guest house that had a fireplace and a window that faced the mountains and the kind of quiet at night that people in cities don't believe actually exists. Away from conference tables, Callum became a different version of himself. Not dramatically different. He wasn't a different person, but the professional layer came down a notch, the way a jacket comes off at the end of a long day. He started joining me for coffee in the mornings when he had time. He showed me parts of the property that had nothing to do with the deal, fields he was rewilding, a creek that had been restored after years of damage, a hill his grandfather had named after a woman nobody in the family could remember anymore. He talked about his father, about guilt, about making decisions for decades inside a framework someone else built and wondering whether any of it was actually yours. I talked about my grandmother, about the cost of being the first, about what it does to you over years to walk into rooms where you have to prove your right to exist before you can prove your capability. He didn't say, "I understand," and I respected that, because he couldn't understand, not fully, and we both knew it. He just listened. The way you listen when you're not waiting for your turn to talk, the way you listen when what someone is saying actually matters to you. On the 3rd evening, we ended up on the dock by the lake on the edge of the property. No agenda. The deal work was done for the day. The sun was going down and turning the water a color I don't have a name for, somewhere between gold and copper and something older than both. We were sitting there in the kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty, and he said, without looking at me, "I don't think I've had a real conversation in about 7 years." I didn't say anything for a moment. Then I said, "What have you been having?" He thought about it. "Exchanges," he said. "Professional, polite exchanges." I laughed. He looked at me when I laughed, and then he smiled, slow and real, like it surprised him. I called Aunt Delphine that night. "Auntie, I'm in trouble." "Trouble how? Bill collector trouble or the other kind?" "The worst kind, Auntie." She was quiet for a second. Then, "Is he good people?" "I think so. Yeah, I think he actually is." "Then it's not trouble, baby. It's just scary." She was right. It was just scary. The last night before I flew home, we had dinner at the lake house. It wasn't planned. It just happened the way things happen when two people have stopped pretending they're only there for the work. He cooked. Simple food. He was deliberate about it, focused, like cooking was one of the ways he made sense of things. We ate and talked for 3 hours. He told me about Catherine, not with the weight of grief exactly, but with a kind of honesty that felt like he was putting something down he had been carrying for a long time. He said, "She deserved better than the version of me she got. I knew it then. I know it now." I told him about the parking garage. I've never told anyone at work about the parking garage, the night a senior partner presented my entire 6-month project as his own in front of a room full of clients, the night I walked to my car afterward and sat in that concrete structure under the fluorescent lights and cried in a way I hadn't cried since I was a child, not from sadness, but from the particular exhaustion of fighting a current that never stops. He didn't say "that's terrible" in the way people say it when they want to move past something. He got quiet, his jaw tightened, and then he said carefully, "Did anything happen to him?" "No," I said. The quiet after that said more than either of us did. We moved to the porch afterward, stars everywhere, the kind of stars you forget exist when you live in a city. We were standing at the railing, and his hand was close to mine, not touching, just close, the kind of close that is a question. He turned and looked at me. I knew. He knew I knew. The moment stretched out like that copper gold water at sunset, holding everything, moving slowly, going somewhere. He said, "Vivienne," just my name, like it was the first word of a sentence he had been building for months. And then he stopped, stepped back, said goodnight, and walked inside. I stood on that porch alone for a long time, long enough for the stars to seem to shift, long enough to feel the full weight of a word that had been said and a sentence that hadn't. He said my name like it was a door he decided not to open, and I stood outside it in all that Montana dark, not knowing whether to knock. I flew home. The deal closed. Everything was clean and professional and correct. A formal thank you came through Bridget, not a personal note, a formal one on company letterhead, thanking my firm for the partnership. Months passed. I threw myself into work, got a promotion that I had earned 3 times over before they finally gave it to me, started building towards something of my own, dated a good man briefly, kind, attentive, completely wrong for that season of my life. And then one afternoon, I was eating lunch in my desk and a news alert came through. Callum Whitfield. The headline was about a historic land and community gift, the largest private land preservation commitment in American history. Billions of dollars, a foundation built to protect natural land and fund rural communities across 5 states. I read the whole press release. I almost missed it buried near the bottom. A named fellowship within the foundation for first-generation students entering real estate and land development careers. The Vivienne M. Carter Fellowship. My full name, my middle initial that I had only ever written on one document, the professional bio I submitted to his team before my first trip. He found it, he remembered it, and he did this enormous, permanent, public thing and named a piece of it after me. And he did not call, did not write, did not explain. I sat very still for a very long time. I called Aunt Delphine. "He named a fellowship after you and didn't call," she said. "He named a fellowship after me and didn't call." She was quiet. Then, "Baby, some men love you in full sentences, and some love you in footnotes. That doesn't make the footnote a lie. It just means they never learned how to write the whole page." I thought about that for a long time. I still think about it. I've asked myself every version of the question. Was it about race? The complication of what it would mean, publicly, for a man like him to be with a woman like me? Was it guilt about Catherine? Was it the age gap? Was it simply that he had spent so many years swallowing everything that he had lost the muscle for saying what was real? I don't have a clean answer. Maybe it was all of it. Maybe it was something else I don't have the information to name. What I know is this: silence is a choice. And when a man who has every resource in the world, every freedom, every possible advantage, when that man chooses silence with you, it tells you something. Not about your worth, about his limits. He could have said anything. One sentence, one phone call. What I know is this: silence is a choice. And when a man who has every resource in the world, every freedom, every possible advantage, when that man chooses silence with you, it tells you something. Not about your worth, about his limits. He could have said anything. One sentence, one phone call, even one honest word on that porch in Montana when he had my full attention and a sky full of stars and a moment that was built for exactly that kind of honesty. He chose to walk inside instead. And I learned more about what I deserve from that choice than from anything anyone has ever actually said to me. 3 years later, my farm is mine. I built it. It has my name on the door, which still makes me stop sometimes when I arrive in the morning. Just stop and look at it for a second before I go in. The Vivienne M. Carter Fellowship has sent 14 young people into real estate careers. I've met some of them. They are sharp and hungry and full of a specific kind of fire that I recognize because I used to warm my hands on it every morning before I walked into rooms that weren't built for me. I heard through people in the industry that Callum stepped back from his company, handed operations to a leadership team, went back to the ranch. I never called him. He never called me. I don't carry it as a wound. I carry it the way you carry a scar that healed clean. You know it's there, you remember how it happened, and sometimes in certain light you can see it, but it doesn't hurt anymore. It's just part of the map of you. Sometimes I think about that dock, that porch, the moment before he stood up. And here's the thing I've come to, the thing that took me 3 years to get to cleanly. I was ready. That's what I'm most proud of. Not the firm, not the fellowship, not the promotion. The fact that I was sitting on that porch fully myself, not performing, not shrinking, not making myself easier to digest, and I was ready. Ready to be fully seen, ready for whatever that sentence was going to be. He let that go. I hope he's made peace with that somewhere on that ranch, because I have. And I would do it all again. The granola bar on the 6 a.m. flight, the Montana sky, the copper water at sunset, even the porch, even the silence, because it showed me something about myself I needed to see. I was never the backup. I was never the substitute. I was always exactly who I was supposed to be in that room.